6:30 ABC North Queensland.
It is indeed at 7 minutes past 4. Well, it is also tempting at this time of the year to rack up the credit card and perhaps to succumb to the continual offer from banks to increase your limit. If you ever do online banking, which most of us do these days, and you have one notification. That notification is usually going to be, hey, take our fabulous offer and increase the limit on your credit card. But should you do it? It seems like it could be a simple answer to being cash-strapped at this time of the year. Christmas, holidays, everything else, accommodation. But should you stop and think a minute before deciding to take up the offer of increasing the limit? And what are the questions you need to ask? Well, Tim Dean is the founder of Credi. He joins us this afternoon. Hi there, Tim.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. It does seem tempting to just say yes to the offers to increase our credit limit, but should we?
Well, look, taking on board more and more credit always has the onus on repaying it sometime. And if you're taking on an ever-increasing credit limit, then your monthly repayments are going to go up and up and up. And you're in danger of getting to the point where all you can actually do is service the minimum repayments. And in fact, around about 12% of the 17 million credit card holders in Australia today only pay off the minimum each month. And that figure is definitely on the way up, not on the way down. So I guess for more than 1 in 10 credit card users, they've taken a credit card limit to a point that they can't pay off at the end of every month because, look, after all, that was the original purpose of the charge cards. And
you have all the warnings at the bottom of your statement. It says, you know, if you only pay the minimum amount, you're going to pay this ridiculous amount of interest. But if you pay more, then it reduces and reduces. Do people get trapped where they only pay that minimum amount and never seem to pay off the credit card itself and the total debt?
Well, I think that definitely happens, that people do get caught and they get themselves into a position. And it is quite interesting that warning statement is on page 2 of your bank statements. I saw one the other day which was quite interesting, and in fact it was a Credi user that sort of brought it to my attention, and it was something like this. For a credit card balance of about $3,100, which is in fact pretty close to the average balance of card users.
Yes.
By paying back the minimum each month, which I think was about $64, the credit card will be paid back in, wait for it, 47 years. And the individual was 25, and they'd be paying it back for a further 47 years.
Well.
And that would be about $17,000 of interest over that period. So the alternative that they took was in fact, in this instance, the parents actually paid off the credit card by drawing down on their mortgage account and got the individual off a fixed credit card debt something like 43 years early, and saved about $16,000 of accrued interest by simply looking at a mortgage rate rather than a credit card rate, which on this card instance was about 20%, which is not atypical.
So is that the biggest trap, that you'll never actually pay the thing off and you'll just be paying a massively larger amount of debt or interest if you've hiked up the debt?
Look, there's moves across the world to change this, and it hasn't come to Australia yet. In England, they've got what's called the European Credit Directive, and that move is where the various sort of banking authorities and regulators have said, we're not happy with just paying off the minimum amount. What we want is a plan to reduce that credit card debt over a period of time. And look, my personal view is if something like that came to Australia and people couldn't sit in the red line zone of just paying back the minimum and had a planned repayment program, then I think that would be a good thing. Obviously, overseas, people are seeing merit in that, and hopefully that'll come to Australia sometime soon.
Yeah, okay. I mean, is that what you call the debt spiral, where you increase your limit, you have a bigger amount of debt, and then you're taking out more debt to pay that off, and you're paying off more interest to make it? Is that what a debt spiral is?
A debt spiral is absolutely that. People are taking ever-increasing amounts of credit, and therefore the quantum of debt is spiraling. I think the emotive term spiral means out of control, and obviously that gets to a point where people will be speaking to the banks or the lender's hardship team and actually saying, look, I can't pay, and therefore under those there's a lot of protection though for individuals, and they can obviously have interest suspended whilst they're getting out of that. A lot of people don't want to do that because they maybe feel ashamed or
Yeah.
It's a little bit stupid to getting into that position, but it's certainly an option that's available to people. If they get to a point where they're out of control, they can either do one of two things. They can call up their institution and say, look, I'm in hardship, I need to have some help, or I guess they could go to friends and family and probably borrow money at a much cheaper rate, which means that they can be paying it off rather than just simply servicing the interest component, which is not getting them anywhere.
I mean, there's also the option of taking out a 0% interest-free transfer to a new card. Can that work?
Look, interest transfers from card to card is something that is very much a January, February, March of the year program, and you'll see a lot of it being advertised after Christmas, where people have obviously increased the credit cards, Christmas presents, etc., have taken their toll. And interest transfers are very lucrative for the simple reason that most people, once they take out a card, it's a very sticky product. It's very difficult to move from card to card, simply if you've got lots of direct debit set up on it. So the cost of unraveling the various transactions that you've linked to the card, it gives it a degree of inertia. So a marketing message that says, make that move, take that sort of effort, and we'll give you interest free for 6 months or 9 months is attractive. Of course, what then happens is 9 months later, the interest then kicks in, and Groundhog Day, you're back where you started. You have had a break, but look, thanks to commercial organisations, they're not giving you a free lunch here. They're doing it with a very clear commercial imperative.
Okay, so I mean, if you can pay it off in that interest-free period, it's a good thing.
It's the perfect thing to do. Take advantage of that break, for want of a better word, and keep making the repayments, or in fact increase them, and drop your credit card limit down as far as you can possibly take it. Absolutely. Credit cards, look, were never designed to be instruments of fixed interest. I mean, the average credit card rate is 18, 19, 20%, and those rates haven't dropped in line with the other interest-bearing loans we can take out, like personal loans or mortgages. So really, they should be for short-term usage only. They shouldn't be for long-term debt. Unfortunately, that hasn't become the case, but they definitely were never intended for long-term fixed debt.
No, indeed. I mean, one thing I've also noticed is some of the offers come through to say 0% interest transfer, we'll transfer the balance and you won't pay any interest on it, but you will pay a once-off fee of 2 or 3% of transferring. And I think, well, that kind of defeats the purpose, because that's an interest, really.
Oh, yes, well, it's like anything. Read the small print and work out actually what cost is applied to it. There's a lot of small print around, and everyone should again realise that everything comes with a cost, whether it's upfront in terms of a fee to do it, or it is down the track. Read the small print and take care whenever you're doing something like this.
One of the other traps I found is one of the big retailers when I moved to Townsville, and I had to buy furniture and a fridge and washing machine and all sorts of things, and this big retailer offered, interest-free for 2 years to buy the things. Trouble is, it put it on a card, and the card ended up having about, I think, $8 a month in fees for it. And it's like, well, that's hardly interest-free, because, over that 2 years, I'm going to pay 120 or 150 odd bucks in fees. So I think that's the other trap I've found is it might be interest-free, but they're going to charge you a bucket load. And even there are ridiculous charges like $2.95 for a repay payment. So things like that, I guess that's another trap we have to watch out for.
Yeah, look, the financial institutions see the retail channel as very lucrative, and they win both sides of the equation. They can win on a commission for helping a sale go through that maybe wouldn't have gone through if there wasn't credit there. And they're also very mindful of the fact that people get to the end of the interest-free period, and then that loan then kicks into place. Again, it's just down to human nature and to some extent either laziness or lack of organisation that that 12-month will spin through very quickly, and then suddenly you've lost the advantage of the interest-free period, and then the loan automatically kicks in. And again, so if you are going to take advantage of these interest-free periods,
pay them off.
Then absolutely plan to pay them off the day before you have to, if necessary, and take the win. I'm not sure that if everyone did that, that those schemes would continue to be operated at such rates.
That's the
definitely
funny...
plan to be a better borrower for sure.
That's the funny thing. I've done it a few times, and I've paid them off, and then I've rung up and cancelled the card, and they said, why are you cancelling the card? I said, well, I've done the transfer, and I've paid it off. I don't need the card anymore. And
You're not an ideal customer, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know, and then I say I don't want to pay the annual fee again now because I'm doing that, and then they start bending over, oh, OK, we'll waive the annual fee, you know, we'll do this and that. No, I don't need the card anymore. So you get rid of it. We're talking to Tim Dean. He's the founder of Credi. So, Tim, we started off by talking about the offers you always get to increase the limit on your credit card. Is there ever a time where it is good to say yes and increase the limit?
Yes, I mean, it's very difficult to say yes because, you know, if you're offered money, everyone always has a view of something they can do with it. So if you go into a bank and ask for, and this is, I suppose, the root of it all, is people very rarely go and ask for a credit limit on a card for a particular amount. They get offered an amount that the bank thinks that they are able to borrow. So the conversations are at two different directions. I want a certain amount of money to do something, go on holiday, and the bank will turn around and go, well, I can give you a degree of credit based on your ability to service that. And it's in that gap, I think, that lies the problems, because you then use the card or the loan for the purpose, but then you've got some extra cash, and that just generally gets frittered away on life. And so you're then left with probably a little bit more debt than you ever asked for, and then you get into the situation that you're then servicing that debt. Yeah. So I think the rule is, if you want to borrow money, best to have a reason that you want to borrow it for, and borrow that amount. Don't borrow more, because the likelihood is that you will spend to the limit of the facility, and you'll then end up servicing it for a period of time.
Yeah, and as I said at the beginning, in the intro, I wanted a balance, 0% balance transfer card, so I did that, and they did ask me what limit I wanted, and I said, well, I don't know, just you choose, and it came back with $15,000. It's like, wow, I've never had a card with that much available on it. And it was quite scary. I don't have it anymore. That's the one I chopped up.
Yeah, look, we find, and obviously we're operating in a slightly different space with Credi, with the so-called bank of mum and dad. It's quite interesting. You go to a bank and you ask them for some money, and they'll ask you how much do you want, because they're a commercial organisation. You go and ask your parents if you want to borrow money for a car or to help with the start-up for a business or even to consolidate a credit card loan. And actually they'll have a much more personal conversation with you, and you'll probably end up walking out with a loan that's very neatly tied to what you wanted it for. I don't think many parents are interested in turning around to their nearest and dearest and saying, look, I know you asked for $5,000 to help you buy a car. How about, why don't I give you $8,000? I think you're going to...
Doesn't quite happen that way, does it?
And lucky to get it, yes, absolutely.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, I've surprised myself that a few times in my life where I've actually cleared my credit card debt. I know when I first started getting credit cards, I thought that would never happen, but it has happened a couple of times. I guess, is there a magic way of getting credit card debt under control and actually paying them off?
Look, it's down to financial education. Once you're aware of, what the bank is after and what they're there to service, then if you have that education, then you move into setting yourself a budget. Once you've got your budget, you can then plan your repayments. And in fact, it'd be surprising how quickly, by making the repayments against the most expensive debt first and prioritising that, then you'll free up more cash, and you might actually get to a point where you're actually saving money. So I think financial education and budgeting, as opposed to financial rehabilitation when you've got yourself into more credit than you probably can service, is important. So planning is critical. Having a budget, whether on a weekly, monthly, or a 6-monthly basis, is again important, because I think most people will be very surprised if they write down their income and their expenditure, and are realistic and honest about what's coming in and what's going out. I think a lot of people will realise, that the solution to that is not necessarily to borrow more money, because that's a road to nowhere. That in fact it's down to maybe cutting off some of that expenditure that's not critical,
yes,
or that you can't afford. So budgeting is a very good exercise to have a realistic view of what credit you can afford, or indeed what credit you should be taking out.
Some great thoughts there, Tim Dean, the founder of Credi. We've sort of gone on a bit longer than we usually do, but hey, there's plenty of things to keep in mind this Christmas about considering what to do with your credit cards. Greatly appreciate you coming on this afternoon.
Thanks very much.
Tim Dean, the founder of Credi, 22 minutes past 4.